أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. We'll be continuing our discussion and stories from Jurayee Az Darya from volume 1 of Ayatullah Shubayri Zanjani. We have reached entry number 5, and in entry number 5 he mentions a couple of stories about the great scholar and jurist Shaykh Ansari. The entry of Shaykh Ansari will come again in the other volumes as well, but in this volume 1 he has just a few short stories. They're not even very long, but still they give you a very interesting insight into apparently his relationship with some of the other scholars of the time. Shaykh Ansari died in 1281 Hijri, which is about 1864. So he was a 19th century scholar. He says, so the first entry here, he says he's talking about his spiritual status. He says that the fact that Shaykh Ansari he was Ahl Karamat, he was somebody who had the ability to do Karamat. There's no question or discussion about it. It's very clear, and we know this. And he says, I myself heard from Haj Mirza Ahmad Kifai Khurasani that he told me that his father would say, that Ayatullah Sayyid Shubayri is the one who recited the Namaz Janaza on Shaykh Ansari, and he buried Shaykh Ansari. So this Sayyid Shubayri is going to be the next entry. Okay, so Sayyid Shubayri read the Janaza on Shaykh Ansari, and he buried the Shaykh. And when he reached the grave of Shaykh Ansari, he said, Hayf, از این دنیا رفتی و کسی را قابل حمل اسرار ندانستی. How unfortunate that you left this world and you did not find anyone befitting or worthy to be the carrier of the secrets and the knowledge that you had. There were a lot of things that you knew, but you did not find anyone around you to be worthy for you to transmit that information to. And the reason why this is important, why Sayyid Shubayri Zanjani is quoting this, is because Sayyid Shubayri himself was a very senior person, and in fact Shaykh Ansari would go to Sayyid Shubayri to learn things from him. In fact, that's the one of the later entries as well that we'll talk about. So that's what he says. Okay, and then he says, so Sayyid Shubayri Zanjani himself says from it is not clear that between these two sheikhs, these two scholars, Shaykh Ansari and Ayatullah Sayyid Shubayri, who was the teacher and who was the student? It was not clear, because here Sayyid Shubayri is saying to Shaykh Ansari that you had secrets that nobody knows, and you never even found anybody worthy to share it with. But on the other hand, we also know that Shaykh Ansari would go to Sayyid Shubayri to also learn certain things from him privately. So that's interesting. The second entry he has here is so like the subtitle of it is basically Man A'lam Hastam. So I am the most learned. Okay, so what is this story? It's a very short story. He says Mullah Aqa Darbandi. Mullah Aqa Darbandi is basically Fadil Darbandi. Okay, Fazil Darbandi died in 1870. So he died, just a few years after Shaykh Ansari. They're contemporary to each other. And Fazil Darbandi is, even though he studied in the Hausa and he studied with all the scholars and all the teachers and everything, but he is primarily famous today and known mostly for one of his books that he wrote on the Maqtal of Imam Hussein, a book that has a lot of weak reports in it. And in fact, Mirza Hussain Noori, the teacher of Shaykh Abbas Qumi, when he writes a book called Lu'lu wa Marjan, where he kind of talks about the fabrications that have come into the Maqatil of Imam Hussein, he says, what did Fazil Darbandi do? He added so much, stuff in it that is not even authentic. So this is the same Fazil Darbandi, and he was known for being a student of Sharif Ulema. Sharif Ulema, his real name is Muhammad Sharif Mazandarani. Muhammad Sharif Mazandarani was one of the teachers in the Hausa, and he had many students, and Fazil Darbandi was one of his students. And there are some other side stories as well where Fazil Darbandi and this Sharif Ulema, sometimes Sharif Ulema would have to remove him from the class because Fazil Darbandi would just keep interrupting him in class and critiquing him basically. So sometimes it would get too much. So Sharif Ulema would ask him to leave. You're asking too many. You're making too many criticisms. Just let me continue my lesson. So, anyways, he says that Mullah Fazil Darbandi was in the courtyard of the haram of Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam when he met Shaykh Ansari, and he said to him, Be'in Hazrat Qasam, okay, I'm doing a qasam, I'm swearing by this Imam Ali that I am more learned than you. Man a'lam as Shuma Hassam, I am more learned than you. Shaykh Ansari responded back by saying that the munkar bayat qasam bukhorad. Shoma ke muddai hasti chura qasam mikhorid. That the one who is sort of providing counter evidence to a claim that is made against them, they have to do a qasam, but you are not the one providing counter evidence. You're the one bringing the evidence. Okay, what does this mean? So that's it. The story ends. Okay, what does this mean? So by the way, like when I would have read this the first time, I wouldn't even have known what does this mean. Okay, it's only after I read the fiqh, and then you read Kitab al-Qada, books of court law, and then you will understand the story. But yeah, initially I would not have known what does this story mean. Basically, in Islamic court law, just very briefly, obviously you have somebody who makes a claim against you, and then you are the defendant, right? The person who makes a claim has to essentially bring what they call a bayyina. Bayyina means you have to bring proof, okay, either some sort of testimony, a witness, or whatever, some sort of a proof. The one who is going to now counter this evidence, in Islamic court law, they have to do a qasam, okay, they have to do a qasam. So Shaykh Ansari is saying that, hey, you are telling me, you're making a claim, you're saying I am more learned than you. So you're the one making the claim, and now I have to defend myself against you. So if you're making the claim, why are you doing a qasam? You should be bringing evidence. So just with one line, what Shaykh Ansari technically did is he's basically telling him, you're not alim than me. If you were, you wouldn't have made this very simple basic mistake. Or, I mean, Fazil Darbandi probably was not thinking this is Islamic court law or anything. He was probably just saying, qasam with Amir al-Mu'mineen. But Shaykh Ansari also kind of trolled him back and kind of, embarrassed him in a sense. But these stories are so short that they don't really tell you, Shaykh Ayatullah Zanjani is not really telling you really what's going on between these two scholars. But when you read this story, when you read the next story, you can tell that there was clearly some tensions between these two guys, right? They're both contemporary, they're both senior. And in fact, historically speaking, even though academically speaking, Shaykh Ansari is, as I said, there's no doubt about his knowledge, and we still study his books. But in the community, Fazil Darbandi was a lot more influential. And particularly because he was a very good speaker and a very good orator. And he was a muballigh, and he was well known for this. And then his book, which he wrote on the Maqtal of Imam Hussein, became so famous, and it has still influenced a lot of the masaib that people read today. When, as I said, many of them are not even authentic. This is a clear-cut case of how an academic scholar who is clearly far more learned, but they may not have that same charisma or the influence or sway over the masses, right? And then the person who is maybe less knowledgeable is the one that has the control over the masses, and then they are the one who influence people. So this is, as I said, as you keep reading these stories, right now these stories sound very straightforward, but as I would read these, and then as I would study more in the Hawza, and then I would get so by the way, like all of these stories are happening in the Qajar dynasty. Right now there's nothing about the Qajar mentioned here, but once you start learning about that, then these stories start making even more sense, and they start giving you some different perspectives and different understandings. Why did Fazil Darbandi write a book like that about the Maqtal of Imam Hussein? Why was he not a scholar? Did he not know these were weak reports? No, but when you start understanding the sort of culture in the Qajar dynasty, which was very different than the Safavids, that Maqtal of his also starts to make sense. Like, oh, okay, why this was the trend. This is why they were writing these books like that. Not to say that they were right. The book has a lot of problems, but my point is, it gives you a little bit more context. And then, eventually, inshallah, after a lot of reading and studies, eventually you might have to look at this entire thing with a lot with a critical lens to kind of figure out what are you supposed to do for your life today. Are we supposed to just follow these trends from the Qajar dynasty, or has the world changed and we better revisit some of these ideas and trends and figure out stuff for ourselves today? These are just the questions that, as I said, would come in my mind. Okay, so look at this last story. It says Marhum Agha Mujtahidi. Okay, this is Mirza Abdullah Mujtahidi. He said that Mullah Agha Darbandi came to Tabriz, and some of them asked him, can you please identify, or can you please tell us, how do you figure out who is the most learned? Okay, so people until today ask, like, how do we know which marja is the most learned? These people asked him this question because they wanted Mullah Darbandi, Fazil Darbandi, to say that the Ahlul Khibra has to basically give a testimony. Basically, the experts and the specialists, only they can tell you who is the alam. And then they were expecting Fazil Darbandi to say that the experts have to tell you, and then they would have said to Fazil Darbandi that, oh, Sayyid Hussain Ku Kumrai, another scholar, is an expert, and he says Shaykh Ansari is a'lam. Fazil Darbandi figured this out, and he knew that people of Tabriz follow Shaykh, and basically he would have follow Shaykh Ansari because of Sayyid Hussain Ku Kumrai's expert testimony. So Fazil Darbandi figured this out, and he responded, Shaykh a'lam nees wa an Sayyid ham mujtahid nees. Shaykh is not a'lam, and that's Sayyid. Before the people even said his name, he had figured out. He said Sayyid Hussain is not a mujtahid, meaning he's not a specialist. Okay, this is Ayatullah Zanjani is quoting the story on 13th of Ramadan, 1428 Hijri, and probably in some gathering that they were sitting in. I have attended, as I said, some of these gatherings in his office where he narrates some of these stories. Oftentimes they're kind of like in the middle of some discussion, and he will just kind of say the story. So who knows, maybe they were discussing A'lamiyya or something, and then he mentioned this story on the side. So that is with respect to Shaykh Ansari. So look, over here you're getting this idea that, hey, there are these two scholars, both of them have academic credibility, right? Shaykh Ansari is very strong, and Fazil Darbandi was not just a random, like he had studied in the Hawza. He has a lot of books, by the way, a lot of other fiqh and fiqhi books. Asrar al-Shuhada is not the only book he wrote. He got famous for that book because that was a book that spread into the masses. But he has other books as well, like technical books on fiqh and all of that. But clearly there was some tension between these two scholars, right? So that's interesting to kind of observe, and this is very common in the house. It's very common, you see it. But once again, as I mentioned in my first video on the dictations, we're not saying that these people, these ulama, they were like not sincere in their actions and claims. No, it's not about that. Maybe they were sincere, but what we're trying to see is that they are different personalities, right? They are different personalities, and they do make different decisions at times. Like you would assume, if you're so sincere, why are you claiming that somebody is a'la? But maybe in Fazil Darbandi's mind, he believes Shaykh Ansari is so off, the mark, that he has to announce and tell people to save, people. Masalan, I'm just making, thinking out loud over here. Okay. So let's go to the next scholar, who is, where did it go? Here. Sayyid Ali Shushtari. Okay, Sayyid Ali Shushtari. Now, Sayyid Ali Shushtari is entry number 6. He says, this is on the 8th of Ramadan, 1428 Hijri, he quoted this story. He says, Agha Akhund Mullah Ali Ma'sumi Hamadani. Okay, he said, Hamadan is a city in Iran. I've been to Hamadan. Nowadays, it's famous for its cave. There's a cave on the outskirts of Hamadan called Ghare Ali Sadr. It's one of the largest caves, like salt caves, that you can go and you can visit. So it's a very nice place to go. He says, Mullah Ali Ma'sumi Hamadani said that when Akhund Mullah Hussain Quli Hamadani went to Najaf. Hussain Quli Hamadani is going to be another one of the later entries. Inshallah, we'll discuss him later on. When he went to Najaf, he attended the dars of Shaykh Ansari. He would attend the dars of Shaykh Ansari. In the dars of Shaykh Ansari, he realized that Shaykh Ansari has a lot of attention towards this old man who's an old Sayyid man. And then he realized that every week on a specific day at a certain time, Shaykh Ansari goes to the house of this Sayyid. Akhund Mullah Hussain Quli Hamadani became very curious and he wanted to figure out where is Shaykh Ansari going. Every week he goes at a certain time. So one day, with the excuse of getting an istikhara done, okay, he wanted to say that I'm going to the Sayyid's house to get my istikhara done. He followed Shaykh Ansari and he went to the house of that Sayyid. He knocks on the door of the Sayyid and the Sayyid allows him to come in so that he can do an istikhara for him. And he realizes that Shaykh Ansari is actually sitting in his house and Sayyid Ali Shushtari is doing mu'izah to him. Mu'izah means he is admonishing him or giving him spiritual advice and basically akhlaqi advice. And he realized that Shaykh Ansari every week, just to listen to akhlaqi advice, he goes to the house of this Sayyid. And that Sayyid was Sayyid Ali Shushtari. Okay, Sayyid Ali Shushtari. Sayyid Ali Shushtari is basically died in we don't have his exact death date. Over here it says alive in 1283 Hijri, 1283 Hijri. So Shaykh Ansari died in 1281, which was basically 1864. So around 1867 he was still alive. When Shaykh Ansari left, when Shaykh Ansari left, this Akhund Hussain Quli Hamadani, who is the one narrating this, he asked Sayyid Ali Shushtari that if you can give me permission to also attend this private session with Shaykh Ansari. And the Sayyid Ali Shushtari said no. Says Shaykh Ansari is the Ra'is, he is the top leader of the from the Maraji, and you must come at a different time when my house is open to all of the other students as well. Okay, just like the rest of the students, you must attend when other students come and visit me, not when Shaykh Ansari is with me. Okay, so that is a story that he quotes from Hussain Quli Hamadani about Sayyid Ali Shushtari. So this is the same Sayyid Ali Shushtari who read the janazah on Shaykh Ansari, and Sayyid Zanjani was saying that it's not clear who is the teacher, who is the student, in between their relationship. Okay, so anyways, these are the two short stories that I wanted to quote for today. Inshallah, next one will be Shaykh Muhammad Hussain Masjid Shahi and Akhund Mullah Hussain Quli Hamadani, inshallah. And if we have time, we'll continue the later scholars as well. So by the way, this video, first it will be launched for members only, and then after a certain time it gets launched for the viewers as well. So if you're viewing this as a non-member, if you want to get access to these videos earlier, come and you can become a member, inshallah. And there's a lot of other videos for members only as well. You can check them out. Other than that, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to leave comments, any clarifications and questions you may have, inshallah. I'll see you all in a later video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.